Om. 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 Om Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Om Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Om Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Welcome to all of you. We have been studying this Buddhist thought in India, in which the topic or part 1 is Archaic Buddhism. In that we began the most relevant part of the Archaic Buddhism, which is 3 marks and the perverted views. So the 3 marks, meaning Lakshana in Sanskrit, comprises 3 factors. Impermanence means it is talking about the factors of our normal experience. That is impermanent, ill, and not self. Impermanent, ill, and not self. These are the primary lakshana. A lakshana means the quality without which a thing does not exist. For example, when we say a flower need not be white or yellow or green. A flower may exist with those colors and may not exist with those colors as well. So then it is not a primary indicator of a flower. So a lakshana is an essential quality of that particular thing. Here what is being said is impermanence, anitya or anicca in Pali, and ill or sorrow or dukkha. And third one, not self, nairatmya, means having no self. These are the 3 characteristics, lakshana, essential characteristics of our normal experience. And we will come to perverted views, what it means, as we go by. If we do not recognize these marks and we think contradictory to that, it is a perverted view. We'll see more elaboration as the lesson goes by. And then the author gave quite a deal of explanation for our understanding and recognition of this impermanence and ill so far. Because our normal experience does not indicate to us that it is impermanent. We think the objects with which we are working are permanent, so we get engrossed in them. Similarly, we don't consider this life experience to be primarily of sorrow or dukkha. So we tend to hang on to them. We try to grasp them. We identify ourselves with them. So the most essential thing is to recognize these characteristics in our experiences of our life, so that we do not develop this attachment to the way we know our life runs today. And this attachment is the cause of sorrow for us. So a lot of emphasis is given for us to recognize these lakshana or characteristics of our normal experience, so we can take care of them with right views. And the third one is not self. Means there is no essential core in these experiences. Generally, when we say we identify ourselves, so we consider our own story, our own living experiences here to be forming and defining what we are. And we consider that there is an eternal entity, what we typically call as an individual self, which carries the story with it, with all the experiences with it, and it goes from birth to death to birth in transmigration cycle. Whereas here the author, as per the Buddha's teaching, says there is really no self, not self, non-self, nairatmya. Now we go into the further elaboration of this third mark from here. A suitable English equivalent for the third mark, anatman in Sanskrit and anatta in Pali, is hard to find. At this stage, it will be best to translate somewhat cryptically as not self. So as to avoid a decision on whether the term should be rendered as not the self, not a self, not I, not the self with a capital S, is without self, unsubstantial, etc. So this is a common phraseology that we employ in our conversations. So let's see one more time what it all entails. At this stage, it will be best to translate somewhat cryptically as not self. So as to avoid a decision on whether the term should be rendered as not the self, not a self, not I, not the self with a capital S, is without self, unsubstantial, etc. All these words are equally meaningful and conveys a similar meaning, but here the author standardizes for ease of communication on not self. The meaning of this mark is best clarified by quoting two very ancient formulas which explored the notion of a self by confronting it with a classification of the constituents of the personality into the 5 skandhas. Here is the beginning of introduction to skandha. So what is this self? To understand the meaning of this mark, not self, is best clarified by quoting two very ancient formulas which explored the notion of a self. So we have a notion of a self. So we break it down to identify what this really means. How do we do that? By confronting it with the classification of the constituents of the personality into the 5 skandhas. So